Whitmore Estate was a fortress of marble and glass, perched atop Beverly Hills like a smug deity, surveying its dominion. From the winding drive lined with manicured cypresses to the gold-plated gates guarded by two stone lions with sapphire eyes, everything about it screamed money, so old it smells faintly of mothballs and Chanel No. 5. Inside, air perfumed with roses and power drifted through cavernous halls. The walls were hung with art that could fund several small countries. The crystal chandeliers overhead dripped like frozen tears of the ultra-rich, their light refracted into 1,000 tiny rainbows across the polished Carrara marble floor. But despite the beauty, no, because of it, Victoria Whitmore was bored. Terminally, irrevocably, bone-deep bored. She lounged on a Versace chaise longue in a silk Valentino robe the color of Merlot. One hand cradled a glass of Dom Perignon 2002, the other lazily swiped through her phone. The blue light illuminated cheekbones, so sharp they could have been crafted by Michelangelo himself. With a little help from Dr. Gavrin, Beverly Hills' most discreet cosmetic surgeon. "Darling," Victoria drawled, her voice rich and slow like honey poured over ice. "I swear if I have to endure one more brunch with the same Botoxed faces discussing kale cleanses and crypto portfolios, I may set myself on fire just to feel something." Her audience consisted of three women who looked as if they'd stepped out of a luxury car ad: Clarissa St. James, Marjorie DuPont, and Evelyn Royce. All perched elegantly in matching Philippe Starck chairs, each armed with a different designer handbag like weapons of social warfare. Clarissa, the oldest and most acid-tongued of the group, peered over her Cartier glasses. "Last time you were this bored, you funded a film about orphans in the tundra. You never even watched it." "It won Cannes," Victoria said with a flick of her perfectly manicured fingers. "Which is all that matters." Marjorie, whose facelift was fresher than the tulips on the Louis XIV side table, sipped her Sauvignon Blanc. "Why not adopt another cause? Save the whales. Save the rainforest. Save whatever." "Ugh, causes are so pedestrian now," Victoria groaned. "Everyone's saving something. It's terribly overdone." Evelyn, youngest and most Instagram famous of the trio, spoke up without looking up from her phone. "What about a new husband? The last one was so 2023. Victoria shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. Evelyn fell silent, retreating into the comforting glow of her 3 million followers. "No," Victoria said finally. "What I need isn't another charity or marriage. What I need is a disruption." "A disruption?" Clarissa repeated, arching an eyebrow. Victoria's crimson lips curved into a feline smile. "A social experiment. I shall hire a housekeeper," Victoria declared. 3 sets of perfectly tweezed eyebrows shot up in unison. "You already have 6, Marjorie said flatly. "Exactly. But this one will not come from my agency of discreet Swiss-trained professionals. No, this one will be authentic." "Authentic?" Clarissa echoed like the word itself was in poor taste. "Yes." Victoria sipped her champagne with a languid grace. "One of those everyday people who actually dust their own shelves. I shall invite her into this temple of refinement and observe. Will she thrive or collapse under the weight of true luxury? Either way, it will be divine entertainment." Evelyn laughed, a tinkling sound that somehow felt rehearsed. "You're terrible." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Terrible? No, darling. I'm bored. And boredom is far more dangerous." She clapped her hands twice. "Johnson." The butler appeared instantly, as though conjured by her ennui. Tall, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed, Mr. Johnson had served the Whitmore family so long his poker face was practically a work of art. "Yes, Mrs. Whitmore. Call one of those agencies for domestic help. The sort that caters to lesser mortals. Tell them to send me their best. Or their most desperate," Clarissa murmured. Victoria's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock." Johnson hesitated just long enough to make it noticeable. "Is there a problem?" Victoria's tone went silkily dangerous. "Not all, ma'am. It shall be arranged." As he departed, Victoria reclined once more, swirling her champagne and staring at the vaulted ceiling. "This will be delicious," she murmured. "Absolutely delicious." By sunset, whispers were already rippling through Beverly Hills. "Victoria's bored again," someone said over a green juice at Arrowhawn. "She's importing a housekeeper like some people import truffles," another added during a Botox appointment. "She's playing with fire," said an older socialite. And somewhere in a cramped agency office downtown, a slim folder was being pulled from a dusty filing cabinet. The name on it read, Layla Monroe. Whitmore Estate was still whispering about Victoria's latest whim when the cab pulled up. A cab. Charles, the Whitmore chauffeur, nearly choked on his espresso when he saw it. He had driven heads of state, Grammy winners, even that one tech billionaire who insisted on calling him bro, but never had he seen anyone approach the Whitmore gates in a yellow cab. "Unbelievable," he muttered, peering out from the garage. Beside him, Angela, the cook, crossed herself as if warding off an omen. She didn't even use an Uber Black. "What kind of person?" Her words trailed off as the cab door opened. A pointed Louboutin stiletto in black patent leather emerged first, planting itself on the Whitmore gravel like a flag of conquest. Then came the woman, tall, radiant, draped in cream silk palazzo pants that flowed like liquid light, and a matching blouse cinched at the waist with a vintage Dior belt. Her skin glowed warm and rich under the California sun, offset by oversized Chanel sunglasses that reflected the Whitmore mansion in perfect symmetry. As she stood, she adjusted a pair of pearl earrings, deliberate, unhurried. The gravel crunched softly beneath her heels as she began the long walk up the driveway. Angela inhaled sharply. "She looks like she's about to walk the Met Gala red carpet." "She's the housekeeper," Charles whispered. "Apparently." Angela's voice dropped to a reverent hush. "But she moves like a queen." Victoria had dressed carefully for this moment, though she would never admit it. She wore a Ralph Lauren cashmere twin set and cream culottes, paired with a subtle but devastating necklace, Cartier diamonds. The kind of outfit that said she was relaxed but on an island. She had rehearsed her expression too. Wry amusement, a touch of condescension, nothing more. The sound of stilettos clicking against marble echoed through the foyer before Layla even appeared. And then there she was. Victoria's first thought, this can't possibly be her. Her second thought, good God, she's magnificent. "My apologies for arriving in a cab," Layla said, her voice smooth as aged cognac. "Your chauffeur wasn't informed of my appointment." Victoria blinked. "You're Layla?" "Yes." A polite smile, cool and professional. "Layla Monroe, here for the housekeeping position." Victoria's eyes flicked from the pristine silk ensemble to the crimson soles of those Louboutins. "In that, I find comfort in dressing well," Layla said simply. "Shall I remove my shoes?" Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. "No. Yes. Never mind." She stepped aside, suddenly unsure why her own house felt smaller. Johnson, ever unflappable, raised a single eyebrow as Layla passed. "Madam," he said with a faint bow. "Mr. Johnson." She inclined her head in return. Angela peeked from the kitchen, whispering fiercely to Charles. "Did you see her bag? That's Hermes." "And she smelled like money," Charles whispered back. "Old money." Within 15 minutes, Layla had surveyed the house with the cool efficiency of a general preparing for battle. She set down her bag and pulled on a pair of suede gloves, not rubber. Angela followed her like an enthralled puppy as Layla assessed the cleaning supplies. "Dyson?" Layla murmured, eyeing the state-of-the-art vacuum. "Soulless." "Soulless?" Angela echoed, scandalized. Layla instead chose a hand-woven Italian broom from her own bag. "This has spirit." Victoria, watching from the grand staircase, felt something strange twist in her stomach. "Is this a performance?" she called down. Layla looked up, expression serene. "No, Mrs. Whitmore. This is transformation." By mid-afternoon, the Whitmore estate gleamed. Layla had rearranged the vases in the salon to improve energy flow and replaced all synthetic air fresheners with fresh peonies. "She's humming opera," Charles reported. "She just corrected me on my souffle technique," Angela whispered, flustered yet oddly grateful. Victoria, however, was not amused. "She's meant to be cleaning, not redecorating," she hissed to Johnson. "Indeed, ma'am," Johnson said diplomatically, but there was the faintest twitch at the corner of his lips. As the sun dipped below the hills, Layla stood on the veranda, admiring her work. Victoria joined her, holding 2 glasses of chilled Sancerre. She offered one. Layla accepted with an elegant nod. "This isn't quite what I had in mind," Victoria said. "Nor I," Layla replied. "But perhaps it's what we both needed." Victoria studied her face, impossible to read behind those perfect sunglasses. For the first time in years, she felt like the less powerful woman in the room. By the time the morning sun streamed through Whitmore Estate's stained-glass windows, Layla Monroe was already at work. She moved through the mansion like a conductor before an orchestra. The staff, unused to being supervised by one of their own, watched in stunned silence as she orchestrated her transformation. The grand salon was first. Layla had positioned Angela in one corner, holding a bucket of rosewater and a cloth made of Egyptian cotton. "Counterclockwise motions, please," Layla instructed. "We're not scrubbing a subway station. Think of the marble as living, breathing stone. You must caress it, not assault it." Angela nodded, strangely reverent. Charles peeked from behind the velvet curtains. "She's cleaning with rosewater? That's ridiculous." "Or revolutionary," Johnson murmured. Layla glided to the massive fireplace, her cream silk trousers whispering with every step. She examined the silver candlesticks on the mantel. With a delicate touch, she repositioned them precisely 2 inches apart. "Energy must flow freely," she said softly, almost to herself. Victoria descended the grand staircase slowly, her cardi and necklace catching the light in dazzling sparks. She paused at the sight before her. "You're rearranging my salon," she observed. Layla didn't turn. "Your salon was suffocating. Now it breathes." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "It wasn't suffocating when Coco, Chanel herself, complimented it." "Chanel never saw the clutter behind the opulence," Layla replied, finally facing her. Her sunglasses were off now, revealing eyes so deep they seemed to hold galaxies. For a moment, Victoria felt unmoored. "This isn't your job," she said curtly. "It is my gift," Layla countered. She moved past Victoria, the faint scent of jasmine lingering in her wake. By midday, even the most skeptical staff members were obeying Layla's gentle directives. Angela was polishing silverware with lemon peels. Charles had been coerced into vacuuming the Persian rugs in a precise pattern Layla called the sacred spiral. Johnson, standing like a sentry in the hall, allowed himself a faint smile. "She's taking over," Charles whispered to him. "She's inspiring excellence," Johnson replied. Victoria summoned her inner circle for an impromptu tea in the East Garden. Clarissa arrived first, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the sun. Marjorie and Evelyn followed, each radiating curious anticipation. "So where is she?" Clarissa demanded. Victoria waved a hand dismissively. "She's busy." As if on cue, Layla appeared, carrying a tray of hand-blended jasmine tea and lavender shortbread. She set it down with a grace that made Clarissa's lips part in surprise. "This isn't your place," Victoria said tightly. Layla smiled faintly. "It isn't. But I elevate any place I occupy." Evelyn pulled out her phone. "I need to get her on my Instagram. No fotos Victoria snapped." But it was too late. Evelyn had already snapped 3. By late afternoon, Layla had transformed more than the estate. She had begun transforming opinions. "She has presence," Marjorie whispered as they watched Layla cross the lawn. "She has power," Clarissa corrected. Victoria said nothing. She was too busy watching Layla speak softly to Johnson, who seemed deferential. When the last rays of sun slipped behind the hills, Victoria found Layla standing on the west balcony, watching the horizon. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Victoria said. Layla's gaze never wavered. I enjoy doing things well. Victoria leaned against the balustrade. You're not just a housekeeper. Neither are you just a woman of wealth. They stood in silence, the air between them charged. For the first time in years, Victoria felt like she wasn't in control. The east garden of Whitmore Estate had never been busier. Angela and two junior maids flitted like sparrows, setting out baccarat crystal teacups and arranging fresh hydrangeas in antique porcelain vases. The table gleamed under the late afternoon sun, draped in a white linen cloth so fine it might have been spun from moonlight. Victoria Whitmore watched their efforts with cool detachment from the French doors. She wasn't one to fuss over details. She had people for that. But today felt different. Perhaps it was because her audience was formidable. Clarissa St. James, queen of Beverly Hills social scene. Marjorie DuPont, whose family name still turned heads on both coasts. And Evelyn Royce, a rising star on Instagram with millions of followers who documented her every latte. Victoria wanted control. She wanted them dazzled by her. But a gnawing unease tugged at the edges of her composure. The cause of that unease was nowhere to be seen. She's late, Clarissa noted as she examined her manicure. I don't wait for staff. Especially not staff I didn't request. She's not staff in the traditional sense, Victoria replied, her voice a little too tight. She's a housekeeper, darling. There's no other sense. Before Victoria could retort, the sound of soft footsteps on the gravel path silenced them all. Layla Monroe appeared at the edge of the garden, framed by the rose trellises in full bloom. She wore a tailored ivory pantsuit that caught the golden light like silk armor. Her hair was swept back into a sleek chignon, and in her hands she carried a silver tray bearing a delicate teapot and an assortment of petite pastries. The trio fell silent. Clarissa's brows arched high. Marjorie adjusted her sunglasses, though there was no sun in her eyes. Evelyn's phone trembled in her hand as she fought the urge to record. Ladies, Layla said warmly, setting the tray on the table. Apologies for my tardiness. I was ensuring your tea would be exceptional. You're the housekeeper? Marjorie asked, her tone hovering between skepticism and awe. I prefer the term curator of domestic harmony, Layla replied without missing a beat. Evelyn burst out laughing. Oh, I love her. The tea service commenced in hushed fascination. Layla poured with the precision of a seasoned maitre d', her movements elegant and unhurried. The aroma of jasmine and bergamot filled the air as she offered pastries dusted with edible gold. This is hardly standard for a housekeeper, Clarissa murmured, lifting a cup to her lips. I set my own standards, Layla said calmly. Low expectations are the enemy of beauty. Victoria bristled slightly. We invited you to assist, not to host. Layla met her gaze, unflinching. I don't host. I elevate. The words hung between them like a gauntlet. As the conversation drifted to charity galas and luxury real estate, Layla stood quietly behind Victoria's chair, refilling teacups and straightening napkins. Yet her presence was magnetic. Evelyn leaned toward Marjorie, whispering just loudly enough for Victoria to hear. She's mesmerizing. She should be on my feed. No photos, Victoria snapped. But Evelyn's fingers itched, her phone already unlocked. Where did you work before? Clarissa asked, her voice like a cat toying with prey. Here and there, Layla replied. Specifics. I believe a lady's past should be as mysterious as her perfume. Clarissa smirked. You're quite composed. It's difficult to rattle someone who knows their worth. Even Clarissa faltered at that. By the end of tea, Victoria felt the balance of power had shifted. Her guests were entranced, not by her sparkling wit or impeccable hosting, but by a woman who had arrived in a cab and wore Louboutins to dust. As the women departed, Clarissa turned back to Victoria. She's interesting. Dangerously so, Victoria replied under her breath. Inside, Layla was already tidying the garden, her movements fluid and quiet. You're making quite an impression, Victoria said, approaching her. Isn't that what you wanted? Layla asked, her tone mild. I wanted entertainment. This feels like a coup. Layla's lips curved slightly. Perhaps it's both. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You think you're in control here. Control is a fleeting illusion, Layla said, arranging the silverware perfectly. Beauty, however, leaves a lasting mark. Victoria watched her retreat into the house, the faint scent of jasmine and ambition lingering in her wake. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure whose game she was playing. By morning, the Whitmore estate no longer felt like Victoria's. The scent of jasmine and bergamot lingered in every hallway. The sharp lines of the furniture had been softened, subtly repositioned for optimal flow. Even the soundscape had changed. No more sterile silence, but faint strains of opera and the gentle rhythm of broom bristles on marble. Victoria Whitmore was not amused. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, watching as her staff moved about under Layla's quiet command. Angela floated by carrying a tray of freshly cut peonies. Charles polished the brass doorknobs, something he hadn't done in years. Even Johnson, the stoic butler, seemed to hover closer to Layla than to her employer. This is absurd, Victoria muttered. I pay their salaries. Of organizing the pantry by cuisine type. Italian goods on the left, French on the right, yet she couldn't deny the result. The house didn't just sparkle, it glowed. Layla appeared at the bottom of the staircase, her ivory silk shirt tied elegantly at the waist, her hair loose today in soft waves. She held a clipboard and made notes with calm precision. Mrs. Whitmore, she said without looking up, I've taken the liberty. I also corrected the placement of your Ming vases. They were facing west. Terrible feng shui. Victoria's jaw tightened. You're overstepping. I'm improving, Layla replied smoothly. You're not paid to improve. You're paid to clean. Layla finally met her eyes. Cleanliness is more than surfaces. It's energy, atmosphere, intention. This home reflects its mistress. Wouldn't you prefer it reflect power instead of stagnation? Victoria felt her pulse quicken. She wasn't sure if it was rage or something else entirely. At lunch, Clarissa, Marjorie, and Evelyn reappeared, claiming they'd forgotten their sunglasses, but clearly eager for another glimpse of the enigmatic housekeeper. Victoria, darling como Marjorie Cuz. Your home feels different, lighter, almost alive. It's still my home, Victoria said sharply. Layla entered carrying a pitcher of cucumber water. Her tailored linen jumpsuit clung perfectly to her frame, effortlessly elegant. She offered the pitcher with a serene smile. Refreshment, ladies? Evelyn's phone was out again. Layla, can I tag you on Insta? You're a vibe. Please don't, Victoria interjected. Respectfully, Mrs. Whitmore, a little exposure never hurt anyone, Layla said. It's exposure that ruins everything, Victoria snapped. Layla's eyes softened, though her tone remained even. Perhaps only when one has something to hide. The word struck deeper than Victoria expected. By late afternoon, the house was running on an entirely new rhythm. Angela hummed Puccini while she worked. Charles stood straighter, as though suddenly proud of his uniform. Even Johnson had a faint air of contentment. Victoria found herself standing by the infinity pool, staring at her reflection in the water. She hardly recognized the expression on her own face. You've made quite an impact, she said without turning. Layla's reflection appeared beside hers, taller, calmer, exuding unshakable composure. I merely reminded your home what it could be, Layla said. And what about me? Do you plan to remind me what I could be? That depends, Layla replied softly. Do you want to remember? Victoria turned sharply. What's your game here? Layla stepped closer, her gaze steady. There is no game, only standards. Victoria could feel the heat rising in her chest, not from anger, but from something far more dangerous, intrigue. Be careful, Ms. Monroe. You're treading a fine line. I never tread, Layla said. I glide. She walked away then, her heels clicking against the travertine like a quiet metronome. Victoria watched her go, her glass of rose trembling slightly in her hand. For the first time in years, she felt like the guest in her own home. The Whitmore estate was no longer just a house. It had become a stage. Layla Monroe moved through it like a choreographer, setting new rhythms, dictating new rules, all under the guise of cleaning and organizing. But it wasn't mere tidiness she brought. It was a transformation of energy, a reawakening of a space long frozen in luxury's stifling embrace. The staff, once complacent, bored, and invisible, now buzzed with purpose. Angela experimented with exotic spices in the kitchen. Charles began polishing not only the cars but also his posture. Even Johnson, whose facial expressions had been fixed in an eternal state of serene boredom, now had an almost imperceptible lightness in his step. Victoria Whitmore noticed everything. She didn't like it. By late afternoon, Victoria stood in her dressing room, surveying gowns. She chose a sapphire blue Versace cocktail dress that clung in all the right places and commanded attention with every inch of its meticulous tailoring. Tonight, she would host a cocktail party for a select few of Beverly Hills elite. It was meant to be her arena, her power restored. Layla, of course, had been included in the preparations. Victoria had no choice. The woman seemed to have made herself indispensable in a matter of days. The door creaked open behind her. "You'll look stunning in that," Layla said, her voice as smooth as the silk scarf she was folding. Victoria didn't turn. "Your opinion wasn't requested. And yet here I am," Layla replied lightly. Victoria exhaled slowly, gripping the dress tighter. "This is my night. Do not interfere." "I would never," Layla said, placing the scarf perfectly into a drawer. "But remember, a queen doesn't reclaim her throne by reminding her subjects she's queen. She does it by making them kneel." Victoria spun around, her eyes flashing. "And what would you know of thrones?" "Enough to know one when I see it," Layla said. Her gaze lingered on Victoria a moment too long before she left. By evening, the Whitmore estate glimmered under fairy lights and candle flames. The scent of jasmine mingled with expensive perfume as guests in couture dresses and tailored tuxedos arrived in sleek black cars. Victoria was radiant, her Versace gown hugging her figure like a second skin. She greeted guests with her signature smile, warm yet untouchable. But something fell off. Layla, in an understated black sheath dress, moved through the crowd with ease, offering trays of hors d'oeuvres and glasses of Dom Perignon. Yet she was no servant. The guests sensed it too. Their eyes followed her. Their conversations paused as she passed. "Who is she?" whispered Sophia Grant, an actress known for her icy perfection. "Victoria's new housekeeper," murmured Clarissa St. James, amusement dripping from her words. "That's no housekeeper," Sophia said. Victoria noticed the shift. Layla was becoming the gravitational center of the room. Evelyn Royce was already live-streaming her on Instagram. Marjorie DuPont, glass of champagne in hand, had cornered Layla near the grand piano, laughing at something she'd said. Even Johnson stood nearby, watching like a loyal knight. Victoria clenched her jaw. Later, in the privacy of the study, Victoria confronted her. "You're out of place," she said, her voice low and sharp. Layla leaned casually against the mahogany desk. Am I redefining the place? This is my home, my circle, my world." Layla's eyes glimmered. "And yet your world seems eager for something new." Victoria stepped closer, her breath shallow. "You think you could take my place?" "No," Layla said softly. "I think I can remind you how to own it." For a moment, they stood locked in a quiet battle of wills, the air between them thick with tension neither fully understood. Then Layla turned and walked away, leaving Victoria standing in the study, her hands trembling, not from rage, but from something far more dangerous. The morning after the cocktail party, the Whitmore estate was unusually quiet. Victoria Whitmore sat at the breakfast table, staring at her untouched cappuccino. Outside, the manicured lawn stretched endlessly, but her gaze felt pulled inward, toward a nagging sense of displacement she couldn't shake. She had hosted countless parties. She had been the sun around which others orbited. Last night should have been no different, but it was. Layla entered the room without hesitation. She wore a simple cream blouse tucked into high-waisted black trousers, her hair pulled back into a neat bun. In her hands was a tray bearing fresh croissants and a small glass vase with a single white orchid. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," she said evenly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You seem very comfortable walking into a room uninvited." "I was invited by duty," Layla replied, placing the tray on the table. "I didn't ask for orchids." "Beauty doesn't require a request," Layla said. Victoria pushed back her chair, her irritation flaring. "You're getting too comfortable here. It's time you remembered your place." Layla tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "And where would you say that is?" "Start by polishing the silver in the West Wing," Victoria snapped. "Every piece. By hand." Layla didn't flinch. "As you wish." Hours later, Victoria passed through the West Wing, fully expecting to find Layla crouched awkwardly over tarnished silver trays. Instead, she found her standing gracefully by the tall windows, the sunlight catching on polished candlesticks and reflecting in perfect gleams. The silver wasn't just clean, it gleamed as though reborn. Angela was there too, carefully buffing a serving spoon under Layla's gentle instruction. "You must treat each piece like an heirloom," Layla was saying. "Respect transfers itself through your touch." "Victoria Fronev, you brought help," she offered, Layla said. "It's astonishing what people will do when you make them feel proud of their work." Victoria wanted to argue, but stopped herself. Angela was smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile Victoria hadn't seen in years. Later, Victoria confronted Layla again in the solarium. "You seem determined to undermine me," she accused. Layla set down a watering can, her hands still gloved. "On the contrary, I'm determined to revive this house, including its mistress. I don't need reviving, don't you?" The words sliced deeper than Victoria expected. She turned away, gripping the edge of a marble table to steady herself. Layla stepped closer, her voice softer now. "When was the last time you truly felt alive, Victoria? Don't presume to know me." "I don't presume," Layla said. "I observe." Victoria spun around, their faces closer than intended. She could see the faint flecks of gold in Layla's deep brown eyes. For a breathless second, the air between them seemed to hum with unspoken tension. "Stay in your lane," Victoria whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Layla's lips curved in the faintest smile. "I don't drive in lanes. I make my own roads." And with that, she left, her heels clicking softly on the polished tiles, leaving Victoria standing in the solarium, alone, unsettled, and furious at her own quickening pulse. The Whitmore estate's great hall shimmered in the morning light, each surface reflecting a world so pristine it seemed untouchable. But beneath that flawless facade, cracks were forming. Victoria Whitmore sat at her grand piano, fingers resting on the keys, though no music came. The house felt different. It wasn't just cleaner, it was changed. The energy hummed like a living thing, as though the mansion itself had drawn breath. And the source of that hum was Layla Monroe. She entered the room without knocking, dressed in a high-neck black silk blouse and perfectly tailored cream trousers. In her arms was a stack of linens folded, so precisely they might have been machine-cut. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," she said softly. Victoria glanced at her reflection in the polished black lacquer of the piano. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. "Morning," she said curtly. "You didn't sleep?" Layla observed. Victoria's fingers tightened on the keys. "That's not your concern." "Everything in this house is my concern," Layla said, placing the linens on a side table. "Even its mistress." Victoria stood abruptly. "You're getting too familiar." Layla's gaze held steady. "Am I? Or are you simply not used to someone seeing you?" The question lingered in the air like a note left unresolved. By midday, the mansion was buzzing. Victoria had invited a famous interior photographer for a spread in Architectural Digest, a move she thought might reassert her dominance over her own home. But as the photographer moved from room to room, it became clear whose touch they were admiring. "This is exquisite," the photographer gushed. "The placement of the floral arrangements, the way light flows. Who designed this?" Victoria opened her mouth, but before she could answer, Angela blurted out, "That would be Miss Monroe." Miss Monroe? The photographer's eyes lit up. A professional designer? No, Victoria said sharply. A housekeeper. The words tasted bitter even as she said them. Later that evening, Victoria paced the terrace, clutching a glass of Chardonnay. She didn't hear Layla approach until she spoke. "You're angry," Layla said gently. "I'm not angry. You're something." Victoria turned to face her, her hair catching the dying light like threads of gold. "You're dismantling my life, one polished surface at a time." "I'm polishing what was already there," Layla replied. "You've mistaken stagnation for stability. Don't speak like you know me." "I know enough," Layla said, her voice calm but edged with something sharper. "I know you haven't laughed, not truly, in years. I know your friends revere you, but don't love you. I know you keep this house perfect because chaos terrifies you." Victoria's breath caught. "Stop. You asked me to clean," Layla continued. "But sometimes cleaning requires pulling out what's rotting underneath." Victoria's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the stone tiles. For a long moment, neither woman moved. "Who are you?" Victoria whispered. Layla's eyes softened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she knelt to gather the shards, her bare hands unflinching against the glass. Later that night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering the hallways, her bare feet silent on the cool marble. In the West Wing, she heard faint humming. She followed the sound to the staff quarters, where Layla sat cross-legged on her bed, a tattered journal open in her lap. Victoria watched from the doorway. The humming stopped. "You shouldn't be here," Layla said without looking up. "I couldn't sleep," Victoria admitted. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid words. "Do you ever wonder what it would feel like to let go?" Layla asked finally. Victoria's throat tightened. "I don't know how." "Then let me show you." The invitation hung in the air, not literal, not yet, but alive with possibility. Victoria turned and fled, her pulse hammering in her ears. The next morning, Whitmore Estate was bathed in the kind of sunlight that revealed everything. Dust motes in the air, faint fingerprints on silver trays, and cracks, both literal and figurative, in the walls of a house built on appearances. Victoria Whitmore stood by the grand window in her robe, clutching her second espresso. She hadn't slept. Again. Somewhere deep in the mansion, she could hear Layla humming, soft, melodic, like a lullaby meant to soothe restless ghosts. Victoria told herself she wasn't listening for it, but she was. At breakfast, the staff seemed different. They smiled too much, whispered too much. Angela served poached eggs with a flourish she never used before. Charles brought in fresh-cut flowers for the table without being asked. Even Johnson stood straighter, his stoicism softened into something dangerously close to contentment. Victoria stabbed at her eggs. Layla entered the room moments later, wearing a flowing cream-wrapped dress cinched at the waist with a gold cord. Her hair was loose, tumbling over her shoulders in waves. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said with that maddening calm. Victoria didn't look up. "Stop calling me that. What would you prefer?" "Nothing. Don't speak to me." "Silence can be cleansing too," Layla murmured, pouring herself a cup of tea. By mid-afternoon, Victoria had summoned Clarissa and Evelyn for a strategy session. Or at least that's what she told herself. In truth, she wanted allies. "She's hypnotizing them," Victoria said, pacing the salon. "The staff, my guests, even Johnson. They act like she's some sort of savior." Clarissa sipped her martini with measured amusement. "Maybe she is. The house feels different. You feel different." "I don't," Victoria snapped. "Don't you?" Evelyn asked. "You're talking about her like she's an addiction. I'm talking about her like she's a threat." Clarissa leaned back, her eyes sharp. "Maybe she's both." That evening, Victoria found Layla in the library, dusting rare first editions with white gloves and a brush made of soft horsehair. "I told you to stay out of this room," Victoria said. Layla didn't pause. "And yet here you are too." Victoria stepped closer, her voice low and trembling. "What are you doing to me?" Layla looked up finally, her dark eyes endless pools. Perhaps I'm only doing what you invited me to do. I never invited you. You hired me. For cleaning. And isn't that what I'm doing? Cleaning away pretense. Polishing away neglect. Dusting off your life until you see it again. Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came. As Layla replaced a leather-bound volume on the shelf, a small photograph slipped free from between the pages. It fluttered to the floor. Victoria bent to pick it up before Layla could react. The photo showed a much younger Layla, barefoot, in a worn dress, standing before a dilapidated house in what looked like rural Georgia. Beside her was a stern-looking woman in a maid's uniform, her hand resting protectively on the girl's shoulder. "Who is this?" Victoria demanded. Layla's mask slipped, just for a second. "My mother," she said softly. Victoria stared at the photograph, piecing together the unspoken history. She was a maid. She was a warrior, Layla corrected. She scrubbed floors and raised 3 daughters on her knees. She taught me that dignity isn't in the job. It's in how you hold your head. Why hide this? Because people like you turn stories into weapons. Victoria's chest tightened. I'm not people like. Don't lie to me, Layla said, her voice soft but edged with steel. For the first time, Victoria saw it, the storm beneath Layla's surface calm. The next morning, Victoria stood alone in her dressing room, staring at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked flawless. Chanel suit, pearls, hair twisted into a perfect chignon. But her eyes betrayed her. She was unraveling, and the woman pulling at the threads was somewhere in her house, humming a lullaby she couldn't forget. The Whitmore estate had never hosted a party quite like this one. It wasn't Victoria's doing. This time, the guest list hadn't been curated by her exacting hands. The catering wasn't her preferred Michelin-starred team. Even the lighting, soft, golden, like a candlelit cathedral, had nothing to do with her. This was Layla Monroe's evening. It had started as an innocent suggestion. Perhaps the staff needs a morale boost, Layla had said weeks earlier. A small gathering. A celebration of their hard work. Victoria had agreed without thinking. She hadn't imagined this. Now, as she stood in the shadows of her own ballroom, Victoria watched the spectacle unfold. Angela twirled with a glass of champagne in hand. Charles played the piano, badly, but with enthusiasm. Even Stoic Johnson had loosened his tie and was telling a joke to an enraptured circle. And at the center of it all was Layla. She wasn't hosting. She was commanding. In a backless emerald gown that clung to her like a second skin, Layla moved among the guests with easy grace, her laugh low and warm, her touch lingering on shoulders, her eyes magnetic. They were all orbiting her now, even Victoria. "Mrs. Whitmore," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Clarissa, martini in hand, watching the crowd with her signature feline smirk. "Your housekeeper's quite the social architect," Clarissa said. "She's not my housekeeper," Victoria replied automatically. "Oh, she's..." Victoria's voice faltered. What was Layla? A nuisance? A threat? Something more dangerous? Hours later, the crowd thinned. The music slowed. The champagne dulled sharper edges. Victoria found herself standing at the balcony, the cool night air brushing her skin. She sensed Layla before she heard her. "You're angry," Layla said softly. "I'm exhausted." "You're jealous." Victoria turned, her eyes flashing. "Jealous? Of you. Of what I've done," Layla corrected gently. "This house feels alive. Your staff feels seen. Even you stop." Victoria's voice broke. "You don't know what you're talking about." Layla stepped closer. "Don't I?" The air between them grew taut. "You think you've got me figured out," Victoria whispered. "I know the weight of wearing masks," Layla said. "You wear yours well, but it's cracking." Victoria's breath quickened. "You're dangerous." Layla smiled faintly, only to those afraid of themselves. "I should fire you." "You should." Victoria hesitative. "I could ruin you." Layla tilted her head. "Or you could let me ruin you in all the ways you secretly crave." For a moment, Victoria swore the world narrowed to this balcony, this night, this woman. She felt her body lean forward, as if pulled by a gravity stronger than her will. Then footsteps echoed behind them. Mrs. Whitmore? Johnson's voice shattered the spell. Victoria jerked back, her pulse pounding. What is it? A call from your lawyer. Urgent. She nodded, grateful for the interruption, though her hands trembled as she followed Johnson inside. Layla remained on the balcony, her silhouette framed by moonlight, a calm predator waiting for its prey to return. In her study, Victoria sank in her leather chair, gripping the phone. Yes. Mrs. Whitmore. Her lawyer's voice was grave. There's been movement. Someone's inquiring about ownership of your properties. Off-the-record investigations. Did you? Did she? Yes. It could be nothing, or someone positioning themselves. Victoria's mind raced. Someone moving against her empire, her position, her legacy. And she knew, somehow she knew, Layla Monroe was connected. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. Again, in the mirror, her reflection stared back, eyes wild, lips parted as if she'd just escaped a kiss or a confession. She whispered to her own reflection, do I destroy her or surrender? The mirror offered no answer. But deep in the house, Layla was humming again. This time, the tune felt like a siren's call. The morning after the staff's party, the Whitmore estate felt heavier. Victoria Whitmore awoke to an unfamiliar sensation, dread. It coiled in her stomach as she walked the marble halls, each step echoing like a warning. She found Layla already in the conservatory, tending to orchids with delicate hands. Morning, Victoria said, her voice sharper than intended. Morning, Layla replied evenly, without looking up. You seem very at home here. Home is where you let yourself bloom, Layla said, misting the air around the flowers. Victoria's lips thinned. You talk like a philosopher, but you're just what? Layla's gaze finally met hers, calm, unblinking. Victoria didn't finish the sentence. She couldn't. Later, while sipping her third espresso, Victoria received a text from an unknown number. I know who she is. Meet me, discreetly. Attached was a photo of Layla, not in Beverly Hills finery, but in a waitress uniform, standing outside a greasy diner somewhere in Georgia. Victoria's pulse spiked. The man was waiting at a small cafe downtown, his baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses masking his eyes. Mrs. Whitmore, he asked, his voice deep and rough. Who are you? Call me Carter. I'm from Atlanta. He slid a folder across the table. That housekeeper of yours? Layla Monroe isn't her real name. Victoria flipped the folder open. Mugshots, court transcripts, newspaper clippings. Layla Morris, arrested at 19 for grand larceny, accused of identity theft, connected to a string of high-profile cons across the South. She and her sisters were infamous, Carter said. The Morris girls, beautiful, brilliant, dangerous. Victoria's breath came shallow. What do you want from me? Nothing. Just thought a woman like you should know who's been sleeping in your guest wing. I never. Victoria stopped herself. She had no obligation to explain. Not to this man. But inside, her stomach twisted. That night, Victoria sat alone in her study, the folder spread out before her like a crime scene. Layla Monroe, or Layla Morris, had infiltrated her life with elegance, poise, and lies. And yet, Victoria thought of the way Layla looked at her, the way she spoke truths Victoria had buried so deep she forgot they existed. Could a con artist do that? Or was it only someone who had been broken herself? At midnight, Victoria heard a soft knock on the study door. Come in, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Layla entered, her satin robe cinched tight, her hair loose around her face. You've been quiet today, Layla observed. I've been busy. With this. Layla's eyes flicked to the folder on the desk. Victoria froze. You knew. Of course I knew, Layla said calmly. The past has a way of arriving uninvited. Is it true? Does it matter? It does to me. Layla stepped closer until she was inches from Victoria's chair. I've stolen things, yes. Identities. Money. But never anything I didn't deserve. Never anything that wasn't rotting in the hands of the undeserving. You're dangerous, Victoria whispered. So are you, Layla said. The difference is I don't hide it. For a moment, neither woman moved. The tension was electric, heavy with accusation and something far darker. Desire, perhaps, or recognition. "Why me?" Victoria asked finally. Layla's answer was barely a whisper. "Because you're the only one I couldn't steal from. With you, I had to give." Victoria's heart pounded. She should have felt triumphant. Or terrified. But she only felt alive.
The Whitmore estate had never felt so cold. Victoria Whitmore stood in the foyer, arms folded across her chest, staring at the woman who had invaded her world and made it pulse with dangerous life. "Pack your things," Victoria said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're leaving." Layla Monroe stood calm, barefoot on the marble, her silk robe swaying slightly in the draft from the open double doors. "Is this what you really want?" she asked softly. "It's what I need." Layla's lips curved faintly. "Need and want aren't the same. Don't lecture me." "I'm not. I'm observing." Victoria's jaw clenched. "Leave. Tonight. Or I'll destroy you." Layla tilted her head. "You've already tried." The rest of the day passed like a fever dream. Victoria avoided the conservatory, where Layla's orchids bloomed obscenely in every color. She avoided the library, where the scent of Layla's perfume seemed to cling to the leather-bound books. She even avoided her own reflection. At dinner, the table was set for one. Angela and Charles had disappeared early, muttering excuses. Johnson was nowhere to be found. Victoria picked at a cold salad until a soft voice behind her made her stiffen. "You're alone again," Layla said. Victoria didn't turn. "It's what I wanted. Or what you deserve." "Don't." Layla circled the table slowly, her presence as suffocating as the heat rising in Victoria's chest. "You want me gone," Layla murmured. "But every time I take a step away, I feel your pull." "There's no pull," Victoria said, though her voice lacked conviction. Layla stopped behind her chair, so close Victoria could feel her warmth. "Then why are your hands trembling?" Victoria shoved her chair back and stood. "Get out." The night deepened. Victoria retreated to her study, locking the door. She poured herself a scotch, neat. The folder Carter had given her sat on the desk, mocking her with its weight. She opened it again. Mugshots. Headlines. "The Morris girls strike again." She whispered to herself, "You're just a con artist. You don't matter." But in the silence that followed, she heard it. Humming. That same haunting tune Layla always hummed when she thought no one was listening. It was coming from outside the study door. Victoria yanked the door open. Layla stood there barefoot, her hair loose, wearing nothing but that silk robe tied at the waist. Her eyes were dark pools, unreadable. "Why are you still here?" Victoria demanded. "I told you," Layla said. "I'll go when you really want me to." "I do." Layla stepped closer. "Then say it like you mean it." The words caught in Victoria's throat. "You can't," Layla whispered. "Because you've already let me in too far." Victoria's back hit the wall. Layla was inches away now, her perfume dizzying. "Tell me to go," Layla said again. Victoria's lips parted. "Go." But her voice broke, and in that moment she hated herself for the truth. Layla smiled faintly, almost sadly. "That's what I thought." She turned and walked away, her robe trailing like smoke, leaving Victoria shaking, furious, not at Layla, but at herself. Victoria Whitmore had always believed power was permanent. Wealth, connections, reputation, they were shields against any threat. But as she sat in her vast office, surrounded by her legal team, she felt an unfamiliar chill. "Find a way to terminate her contract immediately," Victoria ordered. "No severance. No settlement. Nothing." The lawyers shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Whitmore," one of them said cautiously, "there's a complication." "Complication?" "She's filed paperwork. The housekeeping contract was revised 2 weeks ago." It includes unusually generous clauses. Victoria slammed her palm on the mahogany desk. What clauses? Publicity penalties. Non-compete agreements. If you breach, she's entitled to a substantial payout and Victoria's head snapped up. She did this without my approval. She claims you signed off. Victoria's heart thudded. That night in the library. The papers she'd signed absent-mindedly, distracted by Layla's presence. Her stomach turned. She played me, Victoria whispered. That evening, she found Layla in the wine cellar, calmly cataloging bottles as though nothing had happened. You're clever, Victoria said coldly. Layla didn't turn. Cleverness is a survival skill. You think you've won. I think there are no winners in games like ours. Victoria stepped closer, fury vibrating through her. You forged my signature. Did I? Layla finally faced her, her dark eyes pools of calm. Or did you sign without reading? Because you couldn't focus with me in the room. Victoria's breath hitched. Layla's voice softened. Don't blame me for distracting you. Blame yourself for being distractible. Victoria lunged forward, grabbing Layla's arm. You think I won't ruin you? I still can. Layla's smile was devastating. You could try. But I wonder, she leaned in, her lips brushing Victoria's ear. How many skeletons would dance out of your closets if we started a war? Victoria froze. What are you talking about?